Yeah.
All right, guys, we are back and so excited to have Dr. Fred Moss with us today, psychiatrist, author, podcaster. I don't know what else is on the list, but I'm excited to find out.
Mm. Yeah. Thanks for having me. It's really great to be here with both of you.
We were just talking about Laura and I went to Miami this past week and we saw Gabor Mate.
Whoop, whoop.
And we were sharing our admiration for him prior to jumping on the call. And I think Laura had some questions brewing.
Yeah.
I mean, when do I not have questions brewing? I'm like a question machine. Directing the questions is
Perfect.
another story, but um, I always like to know people's kind of journey and their kind of career path and how they find themselves in the work because I think it humanizes people, but it makes it so relatable and so much easier to trust and understand. So, I mean, Dr. Fred, you do it all, but where did you start? Where
Yeah.
did you add and why?
Yeah. I love your desire to go find this out and the humanization that you're talking about, because ultimately, what frequently happens is that people come to a psychiatrist or a therapist and expect that other person to be actually different as a human than who they are.
Right.
There's like this notion that I've got some gold or I've got something that I have that you don't because I'm gifted and you're afflicted or something like that. And that is just a faulty impression. You know, what's really here is we have 8 billion of us walking the face of the planet at the same time. And the difference between all of us is so slight. I mean, we have our own idiosyncrasies and we certainly have our own lives. But the human condition has been the human condition since humans arrived, whatever day you think that was. And, so that's what we're really looking at. And so this idea of getting a story, getting my human story out here is really always very helpful for me. And even for me, as I announce it and create and remember it and create it, I get to remind myself that I'm, as badass as I think I am, I'm just another human ultimately.
Yeah.
And so I was born into a family, I was born to be a healer. That's really true. I really mean it on the day, March 1st, 1958. That was the whole point of my arrival. My parents lived at home with my two older brothers, 10 and 14 years older than me, and then therefore 10 and 14 years old when I was born. And if you can imagine, we got two hellion angry brothers who are, in a whole fair amount of chaos and disarray with their parents. And little Freddie shows up to bring the gift of love, joy, and unity or something to this family in a chaos and disarray. And, that really was my function. I really realized that very early on. I was funny. I was talkative. I was a quick learner. I was cute. There was a lot of things that, I could do that to light up a room. And it's sort of what I was called on to do, to kind of be the mortar in between the bricks of these four adults having whatever kind of troubles they were having with each other. As time went on, I really became enamored and enchanted completely with the whole idea of communication. I remember, literally being in my playpen with my, I'm saying my fingers around those little bars. And, later on in life, it actually, let's see. Yeah. So later on in life, it actually became, I have an experience with my fingers behind a different set of bars, but maybe that won't be where we go to today. We'll see. But at
Ooh.
the time, yeah, at the time, there was an opportunity for me to, really watch these four people sort of talk and emote with each other, like communicate, connect with each other. And then stuff would happen. I was like, well, maybe someday I'll learn how to be a communicator. Maybe someday I'll learn how to talk. I'll learn how to listen. I'll learn how to do what these big folks do. They tell me one day I'm going to be big. So one day I'm going to be big and maybe I'll get to be like them. So I was precocious, I guess I'm even still precocious, whatever that means. But, I was precocious at the time. They taught me what they needed to teach me and more, they wanted me to be over super prepared. So, I knew about rock and roll long before kindergarten. I knew about sex and drugs a little bit, which is way more than what my peers knew when kindergarten started. And I could read and write. I could read and write upon arrival to school because I had two brothers who were, invested in me being in front of the crowd, in front of the lead. So I was pretty, we'll say in elementary school standards, I was considered very smart, but I was also extremely talkative. So there's no elementary school teacher that ever forgot having Fred as a student. I'm fully certain of that. And, as time went on, I was kept on thinking, where am I going to learn how to communicate? Because
Hmm.
I would try to talk and they would tell me to sit down and be quiet. I'd be like, what is
Mm.
it? What is this? I thought this is what can we do as humans. What's the point of me sitting down and watching you scribble some stuff on a whiteboard that I have to regurgitate perfectly in order to get to the next grade? I don't even get it. Like there, what about talking, you know? What about
Mhm.
listening? What about sharing? So, I kept on thinking, well, someday they're going to teach me this. Maybe it'll be in junior high. So I went to junior high, and of course, it got a little bit worse. Like, no, really sit down, really be quiet. I was like, oh, well, that's okay, I guess so. And it must be high school then. That's where these people must learn this. I went to high school, it got worse again. I'm like, oh my God, the only
Mhm.
place I'm going to learn how to communicate is if I skip school, which I did a fair amount of doing in high school so that I could finally like communicate. Like
Yeah.
it wasn't skipping school, it was actually going to where I thought the education was, which was clearly outside of school.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh, this is where I can learn. It isn't a matter of avoiding of learning space. It was actually a matter of being drawn to the place that had more likelihood of me learning something useful. And so I did do that. I learned a lot useful during those times. And, eventually, because the school was only 40 miles away, had very cool football helmets, and everyone dreamed about being there. I went to the University of Michigan. And at the University of Michigan, I was there for about a year and a half in the engineering school without even knowing what an engineer was, because I only got in based on my math scores, which were, as you can guess, always really good. And, it was like, how do I get into Ann Arbor? Well, the way to get into Ann Arbor is to apply as an engineer, let them in, and then jimmy around and go to where you need to go once you're in. That's the reason I went to the University of Michigan. And I lasted about a year and a half and then just, decided that no, I'm not going to be shut down. My communication is not going to be shut down. I can't, engineering school is not a great place to learn how to communicate anyways. So I'm out of here. And I dropped out and got on a bus and I went all the way to Berkeley and back, not back yet. I went to Berkeley, California, in order to figure out what my life was about. I was kind of like an adventurer. When I had my bike, I would always go, my mom would say, don't go past 9 Mile. And of course, that day I would be past 9 Mile, like don't go north of 15 Mile. Okay, mom.
Definitely
Not yeah, it's not
Gonna
happening.
go past.
Like where I don't go, where I shouldn't go is where I want to go see what it is that I'm not supposed to see.
Right.
So I did that again, just always looking for adventure and what is this human condition all about. And so, had a good summer at Berkeley actually, but it seemed like it wasn't sustainable. And my mom said, you got to get, oh, my mom and my two brothers. I now had a younger sister, just a couple years younger than me. Um, they were like, Fred, you should go back to school. There's this new industry that you might be really good at. You might be able to, create a lucrative future. You guys might have heard of the industry. It's called computers. It was
Oh,
like, oh yeah, like, yeah, I could see myself doing this. Like I could sort of see. So I got on a bus and went back to the only computer that existed at in Michigan was at the University of Michigan. So I was like, okay, back in I go. And I had a 2-acre facility called the computer building that had one computer in it. And we would all go there with like batch jobs and punch cards, a stack of punch cards that I had created in programming, Fortran, COBOL, et cetera. And I did this like compulsively for the next term or two. But it was like, no, this shit's not going to work for my future either. I'm not doing this the rest of my life. There's no communication here either. So I dropped out a second time, and this time I was like, I'm never going back to university for any reason again. And I told my mom that, and she's like, yeah, that's cool. Well, you got to get a job. Moms, you're probably both moms. You tell your kids, and maybe you're not both moms. I don't know. Happy Mother's Day to all the moms that are out here anyways. And it was like, well, got to get a job. And I was like, well, all right. So she pulled out a couple of civil service ideas and back in Michigan again. And it was like, okay, I had a choice between an application for the unemployment office or an application for a state mental health facility for adolescent boys, being a child care worker.
wow.
And
Tough
it was
place to
like,
start.
what's that?
From a mental health perspective, I feel like that's a tough place to start.
Well, that's all I really had, I mean, it was like I would have worked at a bakery. I just needed, whatever was next to like satisfy this need. Now that I have a void in my schedule and I got a
Mhm.
mom to please, I got to at least like take care of business. So because the job was actually coming a little bit sooner and they had an orientation associated with it that was 3 weeks long, that I could get paid 40 hours a week just to sit in orientation, I was like, I'm going for the state job. Let's go for the mental health job.
Yeah.
So on January 5th, 1980 was the first day that I became officially a mental health worker. That's over 45 years ago. And I've been pretty full time since that date. I didn't know I was going to be full time. I actually really thought that I would be there for 3 weeks.
Just get through
Those 3 weeks.
orientation.
Yeah,
Like, right.
I'm out of here. Give me 3 paychecks. I'm going to go buy myself a Volkswagen. I'm driving around the country. I am so out of here. I have zero chance of staying at this
Man
job
with a mission.
for sure. 3 paychecks was like $1,200, and that would be enough to get me a car to get me back to Berkeley or wherever else I wanted to go. Like that's really what the plan was. So on that fourth week, the first day, I had told my friend Paul, I'm not going to the floors, dude. This stuff's not for me. And he was like, Fred, but if he said some guilt-driven stuff about how if I quit, he'll have to quit and his family will starve and he'll be living under a bridge. And I was like, all right,
Yeah, yeah.
I'll do it one day. Let's go.
You can't
So
let Paul's family starve.
yeah, I couldn't. A
Not a killer.
Volkswagen isn't worth starving a family over. Let's put it that way. Yeah. So I got back to I went to the floor that day. I do remember that vividly as well, kind of being terrified of the 17-year-olds on that floor. I wasn't much older than 17 after all. And I was finally getting paid to communicate. I was finally getting paid to actually connect with people. And it was finally encouraged that I actually listen and be with others. And before too long, I got pretty good at this job. Then I got really good at the job. Then I actually started to enjoy it. Then it was like, well, I like the afternoon shift because that was a great place. That was a great, we had a little bit more freedom from the administration. And I was like, I could be an actual childcare worker and help these kids while they were helping me because all we had to do was connect with each other. The thing I hated about that job more than anything was psychiatry.
Ah,
I,
I could see that.
I could not stand where psychiatry was and where it was headed. And
I get that.
what we're talking about is, at the time, and I guess the years that we're talking about here is like 83. There was the future, the psychiatrists were generally foreign and they would be in the call room all day and we would call them if Timmy and Tony got in a fight or if Jimmy was up too late or something. And they would come down and they'd interview the child for like 4 seconds. Then they'd interview us for like 7 seconds. Then they would go into the nursing office and write something. And then we'd go have to retrieve the child and hold him down and pull down his hip pants so that we could inject him full of some ridiculous cocktail that would leave him in a stupor. And then we would have to call that a success story. And it just seemed like it was just barbaric and unacceptable all the time. Every single time that I've been involved in something like that, which now has been thousands of times, it's just not acceptable at all. It's not how I roll. It's not really what's here. So I thought that if I brought communication into psychiatry, my brother, 14 years older than me, was already a psychiatrist. So I thought if I bring communication into this field, maybe I can make a difference, like reminding people this is how it's going. So while I was in medical school, there was another paradigmatic shift that was very, very huge, almost as huge as this one we had in 2020, which is that Prozac was introduced. Most people do not realize the impact that Prozac's introduction had on the world. It was so large. Prozac, the pill, was on the cover of Newsweek and the cover of Time in the same month. It's like, oh yeah, this is the deal. This is like the change. This is like the idea that chemical imbalance is what's explaining why you're uncomfortable with the world. The idea that we have something that can flip your chemical imbalance and give you balanced based on something we created in a laboratory such that you can know, so that you can live a life without discomfort. Because if you're uncomfortable, obviously it's on you. Like that whole thing was so absurd too.
Yeah.
But there it was. And it happened while I was in medical school. And, I still had to go through my residency or chose to go my residency and then my fellowship. And so, essentially 13 years later, after high school grad. So 13 years before high school, 13 years after high school is I'm released and I'm a psychiatrist. Like, I do my residency and I do my fellowship, child and adolescent trained, and things have gotten like hairier since 1988. 1987 is when Prozac's introduced, but 6 years later, when I'm finally released, it's like medicines are the deal. Like, psychiatry's job is to diagnose, is to be on the upper end of the totem pole for therapists who believe that when they're done doing what they did and that was left as a so-called failure or minimal progress, then they punt it up to the psychiatrist who's going to do the major work of just slamming someone with some chemicals and fixing them or something. I don't know what the real myth is, but it's something like that. And that's how we are at the top. At the top of that totem pole, it's like, I don't know, I tried talk therapy. Dope, it's dope. I got it. And it didn't work. So I guess that must mean we're supposed to throw the toaster out of the window and see if that works, And that's what happens. So psychiatry gets these referrals, and that's what I've been handling. And, I guess there's a sunken cost issue as well, but there's something like, well, I'm a psychiatrist. And, the job description formally is that I diagnose and treat, or diagnose, create treatment plan, diagnose and medicate, which has grown over time. The medication aspect has just, oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh my God. It used to be like if someone was on a second drug, that was improper. Now you can't find anybody on one drug.
Yeah.
It used to be that that there was like a small set of diagnoses. Now diagnoses are being created every day on the back end of the treatments, that are discovered. A treatment gets discovered, then there's a diagnosis to match that treatment. It's like there's so much crazy shit going on in the field. And so, it's been a really duplicitous lifestyle. There's a problem here. There's a deep problem because for every diagnosis that I wrote into a chart, I wasn't aligned with. And for, I'm not saying it was a lie. I'm saying that in those criteria, I know how to diagnose. I understand. Me and the DSM go back a ways. I'm very familiar with it. And I'm also familiar with the treatment protocols that go with whatever diagnosis I like arbitrarily assign to somebody because that's the day I'm having.
Right.
Diagnoses are a function of the diagnoser way more than they are a function of the recipient of the diagnosis. Like if someone is out either saying the things that I have learned that represents bipolar, or that represents narcissism, or that represents anxiety, or that represents autism, or that represents depression, or that represents personality disorder, and then just clapping onto it and then realize, okay, now I have a personality disorder. What am I supposed to do? Then go ABC down that treatment algorithm. It's all very absurd and it doesn't really work. It's not that, it doesn't work. The field doesn't work. Psychiatry itself definitely does not work, but it does work in some level. It doesn't work to help people. It doesn't work to get people better.
Right.
It very much works as a business model. It is the best business model ever created in the history of planet Earth. Why is that? Because it actually creates the symptoms that it's marketed to treat. So brilliant.
Yeah.
Come up with a better business model than that one, and I'll be on board with you. Because had I created that one, I'd be living in the hills somewhere. It's so good. Which one was yours?
I said pain management. It's the same.
Yeah, pain management is very similar, by the way. Extremely similar concept. I can tell how much milligrams, how many methadone equivalents or morphine equivalents of anything. I can come pretty close to showing you, up to guessing how much morphine you're taking based on your physical symptoms. Because morphine also does that. It also sort of helps you with the pain and then creates pain on the backside that forces you to use more morphine.
I have a question.
I've been coached a few times about this, like not to get out of my lane too much on this psychiatry thing. So, stay on psychiatry rather than go into my subspecialty brothers. But after all, we all went to the same med school, so we all know how this goes. And so over the last several years, over those next several years, I should say, it seemed, Laura, you just said something and you had your hand up. I don't want to blow by you.
Yeah, I just have a quick question because one of the things you're bringing up is something that I encountered and had to like navigate myself, which was kind of like misalignment. Um, so like I understand like you know how to work within the system of psychiatry, how to follow the DSM, create the treatment plan, right? And but at the same time, you're dealing with this misalignment and the clarity of like this isn't really what you want to be doing. So how do you deal with that? How do
Yeah,
you
it's really,
navigate?
really, thanks for getting that. It's a really beautiful question and well placed. And you're dipping into my heart a little bit there. So, I don't know I don't know how I did it.
Yeah.
I don't. I mean, it took duplicity. It took knowing that there's me and then there's what I'm being doing and what I'm being asked to do and how much of that am I going to be agreeable to do? How much lying am I going to be able to make? The actual lying am I going to be able to do and sign my name at the bottom of it? How many times per day am I going to be okay with holding my nose and my heart and my soul, protecting them all, while I go through the charade of what it means to think you have a diagnosis or to think that medications are going to assist you? You know, there there's a place for a disclaimer in all the podcasts. It looks like it's right about now here, which is that there's a group of people, a non-negligible large group of people who are very, very happy with the diagnosis that they've obtained over time. Extremely happy. They're like, dude, thank goodness I have blip. It's like, it finally explained all the shit I was doing that was outside of my understanding. And now I have blip. So somehow that's good, you know?
Right.
And they're also happy with their treatment protocol and they're also happy with their medications and they wouldn't trade it for the world. And my answer to them, especially on this kind of podcast, is, therapy is dope. Certainly would bring someone interested in that to this call. Is that if that's where you are in your treatment plan, by all means, keep doing exactly what you're doing, 100%. I'm not even kidding. They're not lying. Like if you have reached that in any place in life where you wouldn't trade the way things are for anything, then you have reached such a spectacular endpoint that you should stay on this road. Like it's so good. This conversation is for the hundreds of millions of people who are involved in the system who don't believe that, who believe that they've been mismanaged, undertreated, overtreated, misdiagnosed, underdiagnosed, overdiagnosed, etc. This group knows that what I'm saying can hold a fair amount of water. And so, how do I deal with that? Well, it takes its toll. It takes its toll on my soul. It takes its toll on my heart, and I even have an event. I had a pretty major medical event a couple of years ago where I was working out here in the home and I had what's called a dissecting aortic aneurysm. While I was working out, I fell to the floor. I mean, this has a 40% mortality rate. It's like it's a deal. It's a thing. And as I have looked at it, and even as it was going on, it's almost, the fact that it's sitting here in my fourth chakra, the fact that it is my heart, the fact that I've been kind of double dipping so much of my professional life, again, it's not like I have been lying. I have done everything I could do not to lie, except sometimes when all I could do was sort of throw up my
80,
hands.
20, 80, 20.
Yeah, maybe it's 80-20. Maybe it is 80-20. That's possible. So anyways, the way the whole thing ends up now going, we'll fast forward a little bit, is by 2006, so this is 15 years after graduation and about 20 years ago, multiple things happened in that year, but it had me re-looking at the whole situation. And I decided to do something that at the time was thought to be a little bit radical. But when you think about it, you can hear that there's nothing very radical about it, even a little. And that is that I started taking people off of medicine. Just like off, like, let's go. That's good. I hear you. I know it's like, you did what? I'm like, people should be surprised that anybody's willing to put a chemical in their mouth expecting that their life is going to work.
Yeah.
Like, you want to be startled? Let's be startled at that point instead of at the point that I'm going to move that out of your system.
Mm-hmm.
Like, come on, it's like it's pretty easy. So I started doing that, and I had these, remarkable results, which was in almost every case. And I say almost only to be fair to whoever would argue with that is, people got better, like way better, reliably, predictably, way better, such that their diagnosis that they thought they were treating with the medicine were often disappeared, just dissolved, gone,
Mm.
eliminated. So it became very clear to me what I had just told Alicia earlier, which is that these medications are actually built to induce, increase, perpetuate, or cause the symptoms they're marketed to treat. Because if you move them away, the symptoms go away. It's like, wow, it's fascinating. Like, really, there's nothing really there. There's no mental illness doing push-ups in the back room waiting for you to like make yourself vulnerable to them. Like, there's decisions on how to live life. There's choices to make. There's people to be. There's a person that you get to be here as you try to navigate a life without a manual, without a recipe book, and without any template of how to do it right. So, and there's disturbances. There's like, it's hard to be alive. It's hard to be a human. It's always been really hard to be a human. It's hard to be a human. It's like, okay, that it's hard to be a human. You make mistakes every day. I don't know either of you. I am sure that you have both made at least one mistake today. And, I've made several. Like, that's the way that is. And we just make mistakes. And if I could shovel those mistakes onto an entity or another person, I will gladly do that. I don't love taking responsibility for that. And what these diagnoses, really offer is an opportunity to relinquish our responsibility for the life that we have, especially in the areas that we're not proud of, or the areas that we're, feel some degree of either shame or blame about. And it does other things as well. I mean, the whole diagnostic treatment, medication, protocols, sequence algorithm it's again a thing to behold, as if that's the only or the best right path towards some degree of joy or safety, or finding life meaningful. And it just isn't. That isn't what it is. That's just not what it is. It's okay that people think that's what it is. That's what am I going to do? But it's not what it is. It's not the best protocol at all to get you where you think you want to go. It doesn't even market itself as a cure when these things can be literally healed and cured. So how can these things literally, come on, Fred, are you saying anxiety is like curable? Yeah, for sure I am. 1,000,000%. Are you saying depression's curable? I am. That's exactly what I'm saying. 1,000,000%.
Yeah.
Are you saying
So
personality disorders are alterable? What's that?
what's the answer then? DMT?
No, that's a really great question. DMT is a great answer. It is a great answer, but here's why it's a great answer. It's a great answer because the answer is human connection.
Okay.
And what DMT opens is the doors for you to realize, or for the ingester to realize, that we are in this large group of humanity. And our responsibility is to each other to mother our space and mother our world. So it opens up the doors to a new level of human connection. And that is how DMT works. It's not in the chemical. In the chemical, you get a sort of a surge towards that, or a removal of the things that were blocking us from getting that. But the healing cure, the ultimate cure is a human connection. And people, yeah, go ahead, Laura.
So I love that and can't say I completely disagree, but I'm
That's
curious
good.
your uh, definition or kind of distinguishment between attachment versus connection. Because I know I've had previous relationships that I thought were connection
Yeah,
through friendship, and they were more attachment or
yeah,
transactional or something else. And then I met people like Alicia here, and we just surf waves as unicorns together through life, and it's
yeah,
fantastic. And like that's just real, authentic, like safe connection. So
yeah.
do you like does attachment also serve the same purpose?
Attachment, I think, it's a variant of a connection, and it's one that you add. And when you look at, what's a human connection? Like, if all of a sudden me and you become attached, whatever that means, after this phone call, which let's hope that doesn't happen. But I look forward to future contacts with you, but a full attachment, I don't see that
What are
happening.
you saying, Dr. Fred? You don't want to be fully attached. Come on now.
Well, yeah, what's really here is that attachment, like no attachments, no aversions is really a good way to go through life. And
Mhm.
even Gautama figured that out and put that down in what he was talking about to all his people back in the day. And, in words that we still fairly much worship, this whole idea of, impermanence and detachment become really important in living a life that works. So we might become sort of addicted, using our buddy Gabor's words, we might even become sort of addicted to the dopamine bump or the bump, the thrill of having, wow, there's a scarcity of attachment in my world. And now I have just found somebody I'm attached to or someone that I'm connected with. And I want more, I want more, I want more, I want more shows up. By definition, you can never get enough of something that almost works.
Yeah.
And that's where attachment really grows. And the idea, again, is it's just a variant and it's just in your thinking. It's just in the context that you created. You had a connection. There was a connection, even with these dudes or whoever it is that it turned out to be counterproductive ultimately. Um, and it went in a direction where the perils of attachment got in the way. And so it isn't really, being attached to a future outcome is a pretty dangerous way to go, and it's how we're wired, so we just go that way.
Well, that's kind of what I'm curious about because when I think of connection, I think from like a nervous system level and like the deeper aspect of, our parasympathetics ability to access like deep, meaningful, safe connection.
Mm-hmm.
And transparency, the attachments I was thinking about are more like girlfriends that I've had in the past that were very fake or status driven or manipulative. And I thought there was a connection and there wasn't. And then when things didn't work out or when it kind of became clear to me that these connections weren't there, that would almost be when I did feel like I had something
All right.
wrong with me that could
Yes.
potentially send me. So if we're talking about connection being a source of healing for so many of
Yeah.
the things that drive people towards psychiatry or looking for medication to help them, I just think I guess I'm curious more of the like arc of connection because even in connection, it's not always, rainbows and sunshine.
No, not at all, not at all. So I think the interface that you're looking at here is more along the lines. I think, help me out if I say this wrong. It's more along the lines of the interface between attachment and agreement. So, in other words, in an attachment, like what you're describing, it becomes possible to have a connection with somebody who you're attached to. In that, all of our human interactions, including the ones that lead us down dark rabbit holes, are important experiences in growing in our own growth and development. Even if it was a counterproductive relationship, ultimately, there was massive growth that took place at a level that far exceeds anything that any chemical built out of any laboratory would ever bring. There's a learning capacity, even if what you're connected to, so-called connected to, turns out to have some undesirable components to it that you then choose to walk away from, or that you torch yourself or someone else torches for you. Though they still become a human connection or a human interaction, a human harmonic frequency resonance that is where the action of healing actually takes place. In other words, why are we even having this discussion? We are really having this discussion, and people who are tuned in are here for this discussion simply due to the connection aspect of it. We're having a conversation, an open conversation, having very little contact with each other before now. And we're learning whatever we're learning to and from each other. And then people are listening to us and hoping to learn and grow from whatever conversation we're having here. And it's all a function of human connection, every piece of it. And it's
Hmm.
far, far more potent than anything that any laboratory. I mean, there's potency. If you want to go towards negative potency, we can give you symptoms, no problem.
To bring our boy Gabor back into things,
Yeah.
I
he
like that we're calling him our boy and our
I know.
friend our
Our
boy.
boy is a funny one.
I
I like
totally
it.
feel like we're friends. We
Let's
would
Yeah.
do it.
anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Let's bring him back. What do you got?
So he was talking about authenticity, and I know that authenticity is really important for connection. And so
Yeah.
my question is, um, I remember when I was in graduate school, my professor telling us that he volunteered at a mental inpatient facility, and he said once a month he would go in and do whatever the hell he did. I think he was a psychologist, and he said that many of the people he saw would tell him, "I have not spoken to anybody else
Mhm.
since I spoke to you."
Yeah,
And I find that in my work as well, that many of my clients tell me, "You're the only person that really knows me.
yeah,
I only feel safe with you."
yeah. It's
So,
good. It's
how
good that
do
you reach
we
that.
help this problem
Yeah,
where people don't feel like they can be their authentic selves with anyone because it's not safe?
yeah,
And, when I get to know people's lives, I also don't feel comfortable telling them to be
yeah,
authentic with the people in their lives a lot of
yeah.
time.
Authentic is a cool word, by the way, but I think you meant authentic. And so the it's a charade. It's a charade in those inpatient units. It's just a straight charade. There's nothing safe about an inpatient unit.
Well,
We
what about
put people,
out-of-patient? Like, just what about like our listeners who just might be listening and
yeah,
hearing that authenticity could be a right path, but they don't feel safe with people in
yeah.
there.
So again, let's look at the genesis of inauthenticity as a way of being. Let's see how this all even occurred. Like, why would we ever choose? Why would we, let alone not only accept, but choose to be inauthentic ourselves as a way of, in other words, pretending to be someone that we're not in order to protect the person that we are? Like,
Ooh, I
like
know.
what?
Call on
Why?
me.
Why would we do that?
Because we got negative stimulus about the person we really are from the
Well,
people we
exactly.
need love from. So we changed who we are to be the person we're supposed to be so that we get love from the people we need to survive. I just
Okay.
wanted to listen to
Well,
Gabor.
well
See?
said. We're gonna give, yeah, we'll give you a check mark on that. Good work. And agreeing.
She's back.
Yay.
There's a storm over here, so I think something happened.
Where are you?
Florida.
All right. Are you both there?
Hmm.
All right.
It's raining
Oh, I
it.
guess why that's why you were in Miami then. I get it. Okay.
Yeah. It's not raining by me though.
Yep.
Yeah. So do you want me to go back to where we were, but there?
Yeah,
What,
I think we cut off at her asking you about oh, you answered the question about authenticity, and then you were about to comment on it.
yeah. So, we have learned how to become someone that we're not in order to protect the person that we are. And that's always going to lead to trouble. And we do that. The crack in the cement has gotten progressively larger and larger over time, and we just never went back and repaired it, so that we're all generally comfortable in being so uncomfortable by making up a person that we are in order to somehow protect that oh so tender, vulnerable person that we are. We have a person there in the center that we really are, and in order to protect that, we sort of have to learn how to lie. We have to sort of learn to be somebody else than who we are, and when we do that, it's a massive, costly, investment, and that eventually gets called inauthenticity, because it is. So you're never speaking your true voice, because there's so many things that you have caked on top of who you are as your true voice, that you find yourself not talking when you know you should, or talking when you know you shouldn't, or even in like a worst case scenario, actually saying things that even you don't believe. Like, what the hell is that? I can't even wrap myself around
Yeah.
how any human could be convinced to actually say things that even they don't believe as a way of being. Like, it's really interesting. It's like beyond a lie. All of a sudden, it's like it's not even intent. It's like that's what we're doing. So we don't really get, if you don't actually speak your voice, no one will ever hear you. But if you don't actually speak your true voice, no one will ever know you. And this is a huge problem. And I think it was, Henry David Thoreau, the massive men go through life in quiet desperation and then go to their graves with their song still in them.
Mm.
And, when he says that, I don't know that there's a greater tragedy in life than getting through life, all of life, and never having anyone know you
Oh, yeah.
because you've been just fibbing your whole time. Now, we're all doing that to some degree. There's none of us that are purely authentic. So it's okay. It's not like you need to flog yourself for being inauthentic here and there. But can you take steps towards being authentic? This is where the real human connection, this is where that resonant frequency, this is where that harmony of healing actually takes place. And it takes place at that level, whether or not we're playing the game at that level. In other words, me talking to you and being authentic or closer to authentic than otherwise, while I'm talking to you, it's naturally bringing out your human frequencies so that we are actually talking at a human condition level, even if we didn't want to. Like if I land into the natural human frequency, in my authenticity, it's a place that invites other people to join me in that space because it's a freedom. I don't have to remember anything when I'm being authentic. I don't have to remember like, what did I tell that person that if maybe that person told our mutual friend this, and if I did, I got to alter what I'm going to say right now so that they don't think that what I said wasn't what I meant. And oh, holy cow, there's so much energy that gets just wasted in all of that interaction. And so is it an opportunity? So this idea of like, you're the only one I know, or you're the only one I feel safe to talk with. Um, the mental health field, it kind of points to the idea is that you don't have to be a doctor or a therapist to be a fully respected and a fully capable healer of another person.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
All you really have to do is just be there with them.
Yeah.
It is amazing what goes away, what dissolves at that point.
Yeah.
Because what's really happening is that people are feeling their discomfort and thinking that they're alone, and
Oh,
they
yeah.
don't have access to share with other people.
I mean, I read this book called You're Not Listening, and one of the things it said is feeling heard and listening to others is so close to being loved, most people can't tell the difference.
Exactly right.
And you get this message if you're in our realm or interested in self-help books, if we want to label them that, it's like just being with someone in the hard emotions, not trying to necessarily fix it. Um, and I mean, I am probably biased from my own experience, but I feel like the first step is being with yourself. Like if we're talking
A
about
million
connection,
percent.
we're talking about authenticity, we're talking about like being able to heal, right? Like you are the vessel that needs healing because also your mind and your interpretation of how you're experiencing your mind is the whole reason that you're coming to speak to one of us to begin with.
You're
But
right.
what if the whole reason you think you have a problem is actually not the reason? Like I had a client this week who we finally started to touch on his depression and we talked about it for maybe 10 minutes and I was like, I have a hypothesis I want you to go and like experiment with for the week. Like rather than judging yourself for allowing an indulgence here and there, just like allow it and see how you feel at the end of the week. And he was
Yeah.
like, okay, why? And I'm like, honestly, dude, with everything you're telling me, it sounds like your depression is just sourced in how much you judge and shame yourself for being human because you
That's
don't
it.
understand what it means to be human. And he like thought about it for a second. He was like, holy crap. So I actually feel depressed because of how much I'm beating myself up. And I'm like, that's what it sounds like based on what you've told me. So let's go find out. But I guess that's where I'm curious is like, is the first step, is the first person to connect with within ourselves?
Yeah, a million percent. That's where and you talked about my books earlier. So that both my books are aimed at that, and a couple of my courses are aimed at that as well. The True Voice Technology, Find Your True Voice is one of my books, and that's exactly what is pointed to in that book. And then the other one is Creative Eight, Healing Through Creativity and Self-Expression. Again, if we're not aligned with who we are, if we don't have any access to the fact that we are like blatantly inauthentic most of the time, if we don't have any access to just catching up with that and then zeroing into no, what's really sitting at the core? It's that, why are you here? What are you doing? What are you up to? What's important to you? When we can really start addressing that unadulterated, when we really can get down to what is it that matters to me, as if, what is it that's it? What's my purpose? What's my function? When I can start doing that and then actually tapping into that, All of a sudden, I'm stuttering less. All of a sudden, it's not so hard for me to be with people. All of a sudden, I can listen more. All of a sudden, I'm much more curious. And all of a sudden, this stuckness associated with what are now called, like inherent or permanent mental health symptoms like depression or anxiety or fear or regret or resentment or whatever self-loathing aspect might be there as well. um, we have an opportunity to have the jar loosened in all of those areas when we start getting that life is happening, right? Life is happening. Life just happening. Life just is happening. Like when you close your eyes, life is still happening. When you meditate, that life is still happening. When you are thinking, life is just happening. Thoughts, feelings, emotions, sensations, regrets, resentments, memories, desires, they're just happening. That's just happening. So then we have, well, since that's just happening, I have an opportunity to how am I going to manage all this? How am I going to manage this life that's happening out there and happening in here in such a way that I can remain at least powerful, intentional, and purposeful? Like, how can I do that? That is on me. The fact that like uncomfortable things are happening in life all the freaking time, that's actually not on me. I can get that that's happening, but I don't have to absorb myself with that. I don't have to like conflate. I don't have to become those uncomfortable experiences, despite the apparent invitation from disempowering context to invite me into that realm. I don't have to do that. And that, again, in meditation, I think that's the general purpose of meditation is to recenter ourselves away from our experiences as they're happening so that we can get that I am not my thoughts, I am not my sensations, I am not my emotions, I am not my, my circumstances. And in that process, we can, and I just have it that nearly everyone has the capacity to actually regroup and redo how the world occurs to them such that they are left with a greater degree of freedom and a release from the so-called chronic mental health issue that they thought that they had. Now that's where DMT is a really interesting choice here because there's a fracture in how we think we see reality. It's an instant fracture that the round pegs no longer fit into the square holes after the experience. Go ahead.
When you had your aortic
dissecting aortic aneurysm,
did you have a near-death experience?
Yeah, for sure.
Oh shit.
Yeah. Don't go down the rabbit hole.
Yeah, for sure. That was my third one, my third NDE.
Really? Three?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah, they're really great. I mean, at this point, it's great. Look, they're not great they're not great or bad when they're happening. They're just happening. So you don't even have time. It's not like a judgment thing. It's not like, oh, this is scary. No, it's not scary. It's just a near-death experience. That's all it really is. It's almost like there's no time for fear to enter the picture at that point. So that day, I remember it was upstairs, it was a morning, my regular workout with my trainer on computer. And I was doing some stretching and I felt it and I was like, uh-oh, that's so not good. And then it was like, well, that's not even a cramp. This is like so not cool. And I hit the ground and Jamel's like, Fred, you got a cramp? I'm like, no, there's no freaking cramp. And the amount of pain that was central in my chest, it was like, oh no, I'm a doctor. This is an aortic aneurysm. This is the symptoms I was taught is an aortic aneurysm. I get it. Like that's what this is. So he told me to go back there and get my wife, and went back and got her. Then I was in the bedroom, and then it was a question of whether I should call 911 because I don't really trust the medical system very much, Mm-hmm. And so it's like, well, if I don't, then it's curtains today. And if I do, it might be curtains today. So let's just see. I don't know. Let's roll the dice. Let's go. So we called 911. They came here and wheeled me out and took me to the local hospital. But I live in a little bit of a rural area, so they didn't have the goods to handle such a wild diagnosis. And they started making phone calls, and they put me in one of those trucks and drove me like a EMS truck or something, and drove me 50 miles into the city of Sacramento. And I met Dr. Rodriguez there, and he's like a homie, right? He just reminded me of just my doctor friend. And he looked over at me. I was still on the gurney, and I said, "What do we got, Doc?" And he said, 40% mortality in good hands. I'm like, what?
Sure.
What are you even talking about? Like, that can't. He's like, yeah. Well, luckily you're in good hands. I'm like, well, I don't need 40%, and I don't need 60%. I just need to be on the other side of this. And he said, well, I'm not going to heal you. You are. And I was like, that's really interesting too. Let's rock it. And so before too long, before I was being wheeled in, and I got a nice zipper down the middle of my chest, and they went in there and did whatever they did and put in a Dacron patch. And I spent the next 8 days in the hospital. And people don't come from that with this level of robust vitality. So I realized that it's another gift. It's just like my other two NDEs were. They're just, it's just like, I'm here. He let me stay again. And
Hmm. What's coming up for me is something that we kind of commented on before we even started, which as we come to a close, I honestly think my favorite part of this podcast has been how human it is. And we were talking about our homie, Gabor, and how he breathes such a depth of what was it you said, Alish? Compassion and love, was it?
yeah,
Like he just really helps us understand the idiosyncrasies in our behavior that don't align with what we think they're supposed to be based on what someone else or what society tells us they're supposed to be, which then we label as mental health issues. But when we connect, when we have compassion, when we love, that really is the greatest space of healing. And like
exactly.
listening to everything you've experienced, Dr. Fred, like, uh, you know, it's so interesting to hear how it found you in such a unique way and how like connection and love and compassion continue to like surface for you to keep sharing that message. I think I just really love the humanity of the conversation because I feel like that's so rare to like just have so much raw openness in these types of podcasts because life isn't a bow of like, here's how you do it. It's super easy. Like, follow the yellow brick road. It's like the wildest roller coaster you ever get to ride. And sometimes it's scary and sometimes it's thrilling and sometimes you're scared or sad, but enjoy the ride, whatever that
Yeah.
looks
You have some choices. You can either enjoy the ride or not enjoy the ride. If you're given those two choices, which one are you going to go to? It's okay. You can, if you want to choose not to enjoy the ride, it's right
like.
there. You want to come up with 100 reasons not to enjoy the ride. It'd take about 4 minutes. No problem. You want to come up with 100 reasons to be totally terrified about the future? No problem. You want to
Yeah.
come up with 100 reasons to be really nervous? No problem. But the idea is that we are being treated to a just maximum smorgasbord of what it means to be human in the present. Like some of it is really uncomfortable.
Mm.
Okay, there's some things on the table. Don't eat them. Don't eat. I get it. There's some things on the table. And if you haven't tried it yet and you try it, it'll taste really bitter. You don't have to eat it. You don't have to continue to eat it. You don't even have to complain about it being on the smorgasbord table.
Sounds
It's just where it is.
Trying to teach them what do you do when there's something you don't like? Leave it on the plate. That's
Leave
it.
it on the plate.
Let that down.
Pick it up. Yeah.
We're invited, we're seduced into thinking that it's a good idea to jump on and then become the disempowering contexts that show up in our life. 24 out of 25 people may say they like me on this podcast. And then there's that 25th one. It's like, he's the biggest asshole I've ever seen. And I'll be thinking of that for one person as being the problem with the whole podcast.
Mm.
Like that's how that goes. And we get very excited about, collapsing ourselves onto the negative experiences. Again, it's some degree of hardwire that goes that way. Why would we otherwise choose that one? So we do choose it. And what's the good news is that we actually are sitting at the control center of whether or not we choose it. Like it's possible to actually enjoy the ride. It's actually possible. even if you've been soaked in the notion that your life totally sucks up until now, it's still possible. It doesn't mean that your life sucks. It just means you've been soaked in that notion. So, and how is that going to happen? That's going to happen on the fulcrum of you being connected with at least one other person. Somebody's going to have to hit you up with the idea that they get you. Somebody's going to have to hit you up or give you a possibility to get them. Because in that magic, that's where love takes place. And whoever said, this idea of not knowing the difference between, connection and love, it's like, exactly, that's the whole point, is that if all there is love, then that's all that we're doing. That's all that we're doing right now. The three of us, that's all we're really doing. You're the two most important people in my life at this very moment, obviously, because I'm spending my time with you. It's just obvious. And you really are the two most important people in my life at this very moment, for real. So, what can we do with this time? It's not like we know what the hell's going on. Yeah. Let's face it. We don't. You have no idea.
Lord knows I want to know really badly.
You want to know really bad, but most of us really want to know really bad, but none of us really have a clue what the hell's going on. We're just tumbling and bumbling through life.
Yeah.
So, it's funny. Like there is a, if I can learn that it's not on me to be responsible for my life, that's pretty attractive. Like if I can learn that you're the reason for my problem, or I have this condition, it's like, hey, honey, that wasn't me. That was my ADHD. That wasn't me. That was my bipolar disorder. That wasn't me. That was my narcissistic personality disorder. That wasn't me. That was my schizoaffective disorder. I have, autistic spectrum disorder. I have some type 2 generalized anxiety disorder. It's like, okay, all right, I get it. You think that's what did this, not you. All right, that's interesting. And that's really interesting from the receiver's end. In fact, I think psychiatry is the only subject in all of medicine where, as a doctor, if you tell somebody that they're okay, they actually get pissed.
I can see that.
It's like, what, dude, why would I come to you if I'm okay? I'm going to go find someone who knows the truth that I'm not okay. And you know where they have to go to do that? Next door is all they have to do.
Yeah, exactly.
No problem. No problem. So that person will be waiting there with a pen and with a prescription and with a diagnostic pad and with a DSM-5 or whatever they're hanging with, and totally prove to you that you have whatever condition you thought you had. And then you can walk away knowing you have that condition. For instance, if I came to one of you looking for a diagnosis, I said I'm noticing my skin is gray. My memory is, my skin is gray. I eat too many peanuts. I have a really big nose. I drink too much water. And I'm just like a mess inside of a china shop. And that person takes out his book and he says, okay, I got it. His compendium. He says, you're an elephant. Like, exactly. Oh my God. That explains all these things. I'm an elephant. So now I get to walk away proud and convinced and assured that I got this condition called elephant. And I already had a preconceived notion of what an elephant was. So now I get to actually act like one of those things. So I go around looking for circuses and chains. Where does an elephant live? Or maybe I go into the African safari. Whatever I do, I go in looking for where elephants live. And then I come back in a week or two, and maybe I tell my family, hey, I'm an elephant. They said, no, Fred, you're not an elephant. Yeah, I am. I got it right here. I got an expert who told me I'm an elephant. And by the way, it's familial. So you might have it too. It's like, no, we're not elephants. And then I just think you're denying. I have it that, all right, you're unwilling to look at the possibility that you're an elephant, but you're a family member of me and I'm an elephant. So there's a problem here. This is really how mental illness goes, by the way. Then I come in a couple of weeks and you're like, what's up, Fred? How you feeling? I'm like, it's been kind of hard with the family and stuff, breaking through with the new transformation of realizing what my true diagnosis is. But I noticed a couple other things. I have these really big ears and a great memory. Oh, no, he says, or you say, you're like, you're elephant type 2. It's actually a really rare version. I was like, cool.
Yeah.
Now I walk out, and anyone who thinks I'm not an elephant now is just underinformed. I'm not going to, no one's going to prove to me that I'm not an elephant anymore. That's for sure. And I'm just going to feel like I haven't explained myself well enough to somebody who doesn't buy the fact that I'm an elephant. This is how diagnoses actually get created and absorbed inside of our culture. You see, I do meet the criteria for elephant if I have all those things. I'm just not an elephant, because that's not what it, because an elephant is an elephant, and I'm not an elephant. And, these diagnostic, like we'll call them dipsy doodles, like you sort of get a diagnosis and then you own that diagnosis. Some of them there's usually a sexy one for the year, like a good one to have. A spectrum disorder diagnosis, pretty solid recently. If you can do like ADHD, that's always good. Adult ADHD, that rocks. That's so good. It's so good right now. People come flooding into my office wanting me to confirm the ADHD that they have because they're distracted in this world. It's like, hello, have you looked at the world?
It's pretty distracting.
Do you even think for a second that you're not supposed to be like deeply distracted right about now? Now, the thing is that like the medicines, like in the ADHD world, they really do serve a purpose, at least initially, of allowing for like focal attention. So someone starts taking Adderall or Ritalin or Strattera or whatever, Vyvanse, whatever they're taking, they get a sense right away that things have gotten better. And what they don't realize is that, the condition is actually getting worse. The condition's getting worse as a function of you taking the medicine, because the medicines actually cause the symptoms they're marketed to treat. Let me say it again. The medicines actually cause the symptoms they're marketed to treat. They actually do that. Now, that's part of this brilliant business model. It's so good, but it's not because the medicine creators are bad people. Those people who are working in those towers are great people. They can take care of my cats and my kids. They're good. They can live right next door. No problem. Never be afraid of them. They're good. They're doing what they think is right. Everyone is doing what they think is right. But the system as a whole has this nefarious notion to it, which is it will perpetuate. It already declares out loud, once you have a psychiatric condition, it's with you for life. No kidding. Once you have a diagnosed psychiatric condition, we will make sure that this sticks with you for your life.
I just ordered Cured, which was a book that Gabor.
Yeah, Cured's a good one. Yeah.
So I'm really excited to dive into that. But I do love what you're saying, and I think there's a lot of truth in what you're saying. And I think we also went to see Eckhart Tolle like last month.
I didn't see him, but
and
yeah,
he was also talking about something similar, is just about like, yeah, life is doing what life does, and everybody suffers, and that's just a part of the deal. And how we get through it is getting still with ourselves, just being present with ourselves. And you're saying we need to take it to the next level, not just with ourselves, but also connect with other people. And healing happens in that way. So that is something that's really exciting, because I think our audience, at least, are people who are trying to figure out, how can I do this and at the lowest cost?
Yeah.
Well, one of the beautiful what you're saying, when you start looking at how long ago was the idea of connection as a source of human healing? When was it really developed? And you could go back a long ways. I mean, you can go back to different writing eras, to Sartre and Camus, or you can go back to, the Dharma, you can go back to Jesus, you can go back to the Torah, you can go back to wherever you need to go, where all these things have been talked about over time. This idea of connecting with ourselves through meditation or through sitting still and silent anyhow, whether it's, again, whether you're talking about Kabat-Zinn, or you're talking about Tolle, or you're talking about any of the meditation gurus, Michael Singer, etc. You have stuff has been valuable since the beginning of time. Otherwise, we become our circumstances. If we don't pay attention to this, we become our circumstances. One of the things, and I'm going to say this, I don't think I've ever said this on a podcast, but I think the idea was that Shabbat, or the seventh day, like the celebration of stop it, like stop working, is in some ways the essence of a meditation. It's like, now stop and be with you and be with your family and go learn and don't create. Like, don't create today. And today, of course, is Saturday, so it is actually the Shabbat. But this idea of like, hold it, don't get caught up on the train that's going over there. You don't have to jump on. And that's where the real magic sits, is that I'm kicking around what you said, that I'm asking people to take it to the next level. What happens when you meditate, or what happens when you get mindful, what happens when you look at your own inherent flaws or the difficulties of the human condition that we're all absolutely dealing with, attending to, is that actually, I forgot where I was going here, so I'm going to drop that.
It's okay.
Yeah,
I love it.
I could probably fill it in with something, but I instead of doing that. Yeah.
You said you were thinking about that idea of taking it to the next level.
Oh yeah. So when we get steady with ourselves, that leaves us available to be with other people. And in fact, not only available, it's like if we're going to find ourselves at 420 hertz, if that's where we're going to go, then let's just go there. Let's like play around there, because all of humanity plays around at that frequency. I think I got that. It might be 432, whatever one. I'm sorry. I think it's 432. Anyways, it's like, we get to be human as long as we move the stuff out of the way that has been developed since we were born, that sort of obscures our capacity to be human. Yeah. So it's a matter of unlearning the things that we've learned that have actually obscured our capacity to be, honest and genuine and authentic with ourselves and others. I don't know. I don't feel like it's very controversial what I'm saying. Yeah. Which is really fun. That's what makes this whole, I don't care which side you are about that topic or that topic. I don't care what you think about this or that. I don't have any, not for this anyways, like if you think this or you think that, or you think he's good, or you think they're bad, or you think this isn't right, or you think that is right, or lots of energy should go there, or no energy should go there, or I represent that, or I don't care. This is all the same anyways. Can we be open to people who have adversarial opinions? That's a new one. This idea of canceling people off our list because they disagree with us on one thing. It's freaking pitiful. It's just so sad. It's so sad to fracture ourselves from the inner circle. It's so sad. It really is. It's like, wow, if that's the way that things go, then unification isn't really real. And we have an opportunity to learn how to be compassionate, even with an adversarial opinion, even with a diametrically opposed idea, and to just be curious. But the only way that's going to happen is through authenticity. For instance, I'm sure you know some friends who think differently than you about a topic that you think is important, whatever that is, politics, COVID, either the wars going
we
on,
could mention, yeah,
whatever's going on. Now, people have their own opinions about whatever's going on. Have you noticed that if they're being authentic when they're describing whatever their position is, even if it's diametrically opposed to yours, you can listen to them?
Yeah.
As long as they're being authentic. That's what wins. But when people are bullshitting, when people are saying stuff just to stay on the crowd or whatever, they're inauthentic. They're just like spitting out nails that don't really make sense even to them. It's very hard to listen to that person, because the gauging rate isn't whether or not you agree with them. The gauging rate is, are they being authentic? And this is the pathway that we're utilizing to create healing. What do we have to do? Well, I guess in some ways, what's the whole point of what like, in 2006, when I started doing this, as you can imagine, there was a lot of emotions. It was like, wow, this shit I've been doing for 15 years is making people worse. And I already swore that I would never do that. Like, what am I supposed to do with it? What am I supposed to do with this information? And some human part of me wanted to go to the top of the mountain, or, like scream it to everybody, to my friends, to the parents of kids taking drugs, to my colleagues, to the industry, to, people who are thinking about coming into mental health field, like to up and coming therapists, whatever. But that level of violence that was actually sitting there wasn't going to be a way to get this message across. So the only way I could really get this message across was find a soft spot in the system. So it's not the meds. The meds are not the problem. In the same way that rat poison is not a problem, it's just use it for rats. It's all. It's okay. If you want to kill rats, then give them rat poison. That'll work. Meds are a benign substance. How can they be a problem? They're not a problem. So what is the problem? Where is the entryway to the cycle that can give us some growth and give us a new perspective? Well, it turns out the industry is not the problem. Big pharma is not. I tried to call Big Pharma the other day. I'm like, oh, what's the phone number? There is no Big Pharma. That's interesting. There's no like medical field. I tried to call the medical field the other day. No phone number. I don't know. I can't talk to them. There's nothing there. But when we, really start realizing where is the hook? The hook comes with us. You see, we start believing thoroughly through and through that there's something wrong with us. What we then forget is that every one of us thinks there's something wrong with us. Every one of us thinks there's something wrong with them. That's that's a sign of being normal, is to know that there's something wrong with you. Like, it's just part of the human condition. Why? Because we are spending time comparing our inners to everybody's outwards, like at least a little bit that. Yeah. So maybe there's nothing wrong with you. You see, if there's nothing wrong with you, then you won't enter the system. If you don't need to be fixed, if you're pretty sure you don't need to be fixed, that you're just bumbling and stumbling. And I'm not saying don't talk to somebody. By all means, talk to everybody and be very kind and very open, compassionate, understanding, forgiving, accepting. Bring it all. It's all good. Loving, just do it. But I am saying there might be nothing wrong with you. We don't blame a log for burning in a fire, because that's what logs do in a fire. What are we doing blaming ourselves for being like clueless inside of this world?
That's a very good question. I love that.
It's okay.
That's a great ending point too. I would love to leave the listeners to think about that. Like, why are we blaming ourselves for, I think, and you've said the word multiple times today, just being human. That's what we're doing. We're just being human. We're making mistakes, we're suffering, we're doing the human shit that we're supposed to be here to do. And I mean, I assume that's what we're supposed to be here to do, because that's what we're doing.
That's what we're doing. Yeah.
Part of the experience, at least.
Yeah.
And what's wrong with that? Why is that so bad? And I think that's a great question.
Yeah. So yeah, the real question is that, or maybe the real take-home message is, maybe there's nothing wrong with you at all. Maybe. People who want to argue that, oh no, there's something wrong with me. I've been told already a lot of times by some really important people that there's something wrong with me. And I've had it since I was 12 years old, and they've already confirmed it. And I don't have any time to question that. I just have it that there's something wrong with me because that's what they told me. I'm a freaking elephant. I get it. You're an elephant. I get it. It's good. You want me to treat you like an elephant?
Here's some peanuts.
Yeah, here's some peanuts. Exactly. It really is. Here's some peanuts. And, we start really looking at I don't know, there's something consistent about the story I'm delivering today. It's like, oh, yeah, it's okay. I'm not even mad at the practitioners. I'm not even mad at the business owners. I'm not mad at the industries. Whatever.
Yeah.
They
Well, I think
exist because they exist. Yeah.
that part of it that you're talking about right now reminds me of a podcast I saw with Brene Brown where
She's so good.
she was talking about are people doing the best that they can? And she asked her husband, "Do you believe that people are doing the best that they can?" And she said he was like, "Oh, I don't know. I have to really think about that." So he came back to her later and said, "I don't know if they're doing the best that they can, but I know that I feel better if I believe that they are."
Yeah, exactly. And I
I
think,
believe we are.
even if people, what was that?
I believe we are.
Yeah. Well, even when you see, here's the thing, even on the rare but possible instances where I now am not going to do the best that I can, okay, let's say I'm now not going to do that as best as I can. I'm going to make a decision to now not do that which I know would represent the best that I can.
Okay.
At that moment, I am making the best decision I can, all things considered, to not make the decision to do the best that I can.
Yes.
And
Agreed.
it's just representative of me continuing to do the best that I can. All things considered, my next move is to not do the best thing that I can in a particular area. And therefore, I'm still creating.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Dang it. Well, we have to go. I clearly we could keep talking, and I am so happy about that. And I thank you so much for really bringing authenticity to the podcast today.
Thank you. Yeah.
For being with us and for giving us your time. And we'll be looking you up again. And thank you so much for giving us the ways to find you with your books and your podcast.
Yeah, let me give one more way. I think the growing community is our biggest focus these days. So bringing people in who have a like-minded, sort of at least likely-minded, if not complementary way of looking at life. There's the Welcome to Humanity, Welcome to Humanity is the overarching brand, of course, and so this is the human condition. I think the brand has really, when we picked it up several years ago, I don't think I knew how good of a name it is, but it's really good, including the .net. But the Welcome to Humanity Mighty Networks community that I'm growing is where I'd really love to direct people. And there's some real growth there in the idea. It's a social media alternative, number one. So people are there for the right reason and they're there for interaction and learning and growing together. So that's at welcometohumanity.mn.co, MN multi-network.co. I'm sorry, Mighty Network. And then, yeah, I'm up to all sorts of cool stuff. I think if you want to get a hold of me, which we've talked about, then Dr. Fred, drfred360.com is one way to do that. There's a lot of ways. You can find me on social media, but I'd be more than curious, more than interested in talking to any of the people who are listening to us, either people who are considering coming into the field or people who have already come into the field and are dissatisfied with the way things are going and wonder how to get out. I can only stand at the entranceway pushing people from coming in for so long. I can't, that's a bad job to have. Be hired by an arena where my job then becomes stand at the entrance door and tell people don't come in here. It's like it's a rough job. Yeah.
All right, so we can find you on those websites, and
Yeah.
that's what we'll do. So thank you
Yeah.
so much once again, and hopefully we'll see you soon.
I love that. Thank you. It was a great conversation. Please, yeah, please express my gratefulness to your partner as well.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks again.
All right.